think offset by 150. That should be good. Okay. Wow, everybody. We have had a couple issues. Welcome to the live stream. I think this is working. I think it sounds good. I think everything is. If you're still with us, let me know if that's not the case. I'm going to add one more microphone because we have a guest today, and for all the flustering that sort of happened, I think we can actually have a good conversation. So let's see. Let me just add one more microphone, and then I'll tell you the tale. And I think this is a good teachable moment, don't you think, Beth?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. About some things. So, what did I get from audio input capture? We need one more mic, and then I think we're good. I think we're gonna be good. All right, captured there. We're good to go. We set the time. All right. So it looks like things seem to be working. It looks like the mic. Beth, you want to check real quick?
Check, check.
Check, check. All right. Fantastic. Everybody, welcome back to the live stream. Yes, we had a couple difficulties. Sorry about that. It was just, yeah, a matter of making sure that everything was good to go. And we were trying to do a little bit of a dual stream on Twitch and on YouTube, and we had a few hiccups. So everything looks to be working now. If it's not, let me know. Let me know in the chat. We'll be happy to get more sad about it if we need to be. But nevertheless, this is Get Writ Live. It's the first episode, so we're going to have a little hiccups here every once in a while. But nevertheless, welcome back. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this stream is all about if this is your first time here. And I hope you'll come back because I think we have some amazing programming coming up here on the stream in the next few weeks. So I am Dr. Rich Scheivner, once again back for Get Writ Live. And this is a weekly live stream about all things writing. So anything from process to goal setting to scary things that we tend to avoid when we write, amazing programs on the web, writing for the web, as well as any kind of things like self-care. We have so much planned for the year, and all of it will be on Wednesdays from 11:30 to 1 right here in the office, unless I am at home for some reason. But I did this last year. It was super fun, and I just want to give a shout out to Dr. John Suffren, who supported this live stream. He is our Writing Center director here at York University, and the Writing Center staff as well. Thanks so much for helping organize this and to promote it, and to my chair, Andrea McKenzie, also for supporting it, and really just believing in the power of workshops and things like that. We do workshops all the time in the Writing Center, from ones that are sort of month to month and then repeating every term to new ones all the time that are coming out. So if you're ever looking for additional supports in the Writing Center, besides the one-on-one things that we do, feel free to check those out too. They're amazing. In fact, I'm doing one tomorrow on Thursday, which is October 6th, actually on research methods. So if you want to check that out, that will be live on Zoom. And then who knows, maybe one day we'll actually stream these on YouTube as well. But today we have a conversation that we've been waiting to do for about 20 minutes now or more. And we're going to talk about your fall writing goals. So here's a funny thing that we'll talk about. It's the fact that sometimes when you have goals, you're going to have obstacles that may obstruct you from meeting those goals. And so for me, this is a very interesting conversation to have today because as we were setting up this first stream, everything just kind of disappeared on my screen. It was really amazing. My guest here, Dr. Beth Caravella, who we're going to talk to in just a minute, got to see that happen live right there in front of me. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so we'll probably talk about some of those ways you can pivot around on your goals, you know, if you run into various obstacles. And just to say that's kind of sometimes part of the process. You know, you do have goals, you have things that may prevent you from achieving those goals, and kind of coping with ways to adapt can be really important and part of the writing process. Now, if you have particular goals and you want to talk through those as well, please let us know here in the chat, and we can have a conversation about that, because this is meant to be a conversation in a lot of different ways. And I can talk forever. You know, I do this kind of stuff every day as a lecturer and a teacher, but I love talking with you all as well. So I just want to say hello to Keita And you hear Amana as well for joining us in the chat. Thanks for saying hello, and thanks for your patience while we've been waiting. Okay, so real quick, we're going to turn to Dr. Beth Caravella, or Elizabeth Caravella. First, I want to go ahead and introduce her and just to say a few words about what she has done. Really good friend of mine and also a great colleague in the department. Yeah, and so let's turn to that conversation in a minute. And I was very interested in talking with her because of goal setting. She does a very good job of tracking her goals, and I think we can learn a lot from her as a teacher and researcher. All right, so Elizabeth Beth Caravella earned a PhD in rhetoric and writing, or writing and rhetoric, excuse me, at George Mason University, specializing in digital rhetoric, multimodal and visual composition, and video games. Her research appears in Computers and Composition, Technical Communication Quarterly, and a number of edited collections. In fact, I first met Beth when she and a colleague submitted a work to Technical Communication Quarterly, and I was the special issue editor for that. So it was a really nice way to see the kind of research moves she does with her colleague, Ronnie Joyner. In addition to academic research, Beth also conducts industry research for a number of game developers, including Blizzard Entertainment and Bethesda Games. Her current work appears or examines the rhetoric of visual cueing in video games. She intends to move forward with her first monograph, which we'll also probably talk about, right? Okay. And outside of teaching and research, she enjoys hiking, drawing, yoga, and playing video games. She also fosters dogs for a local rescue and always has cute puppy pictures to share. So if you're interested in seeing any of those, let us know too. And I could just say, personally that her dogs are super cute. So yeah. All right, let's start to the conversation. I think I just got to switch this cam over because we had to reset everything as you saw live, Beth. Let's do that, and I'll just swing over. Thanks for your patience. You're like a one-person show here we've got going on. Okay, let's swing this thing over, and then we'll have the conversation. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna move this here, right on the fly. And then we've got this to reference as we go. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, Beth, thank you so much for your patience. This was very interesting to work through, like while we were setting it up, right?
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me why I am not into live streaming, because too much can go wrong while you are actually in front of people.
What can go wrong will go wrong. There's times where I've been streaming, and I think even the first one I did for WRIT Live, do you remember? I think you joined it just in the chat, and there was somebody who was working on construction next door, and I said the whole time was like sort of nails and all that good stuff, it was very interesting. So we're talking about goals. You know what, let's just sort of start with this one because this is a very timely thing that happened. What have you done in the past if you've had something obstruct your goal, like just any kind of goal? It can be writing, but really anything.
So I guess usually my approach to this is really if I come up against a wall or I hit a wall, depending how much it knocks me back, right? Because some walls are a little bit softer than others.
Mm-hmm.
After I've dusted myself off, my big movement is really to just pivot. I think keeping a lot of forward momentum, keeping yourself going, and really, because everybody's going to hit obstacles, right? Everybody hits a challenge. There's not a single person who, whether it's writing or something else, even if it looks like they're getting through that process easily, they're probably not. And so as long as you keep going, keep trying, even if you hit a wall and your next method is to try to find a ladder to climb over that wall, or to get a little bit more destructive, maybe you blow that wall up.
Yeah.
Or maybe that wall is just completely impenetrable, and so you have to turn away from it and go elsewhere, and I'm sure you'll hit another wall along the way somewhere else. But really, as long as you've got, even if you're taking one step forward, 2 steps back, like, you've still got some kind of momentum and movement there. So I think that would be the most important thing for me, at least.
You research video games, and I can't remember if I've heard this in video games or not, but the concept that if you hit a wall, the only way is to go through the wall. Does that sort of happen a lot in video games in your experience, or does that work?
Oh, absolutely. So my take on, because a lot of people think about when they hit a wall or they hit a challenge, it can feel like a failure, and I don't want to mitigate. Sometimes when we hit those walls, whether like they can cause a real emotional response, right? They can really tear us down, and I think really games and studying games has kind of helped me reframe that idea of failure, because if you die in a game you respawn.
Yeah.
There are some where you don't, but even in games like EVE Online or something else, where if you lose your ship you lose everything you had, you're still invited to build that back up again. There's really no point in time where you just absolutely have to stop and you can't do something else. And I think that really kind of, I try to live that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to keep going, you got to keep trying, because otherwise, I don't know, what's the alternative, right?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I'm gonna pull this up real quick, just to riff. But if we look at like Dark Souls walkthroughs, there's a whole place where when you have a goal, you're trying to like get past this level or something like that. And this will probably go off. I don't know what's going to happen here, but we'll see. When you're trying to meet these various, you're trying to get an item or trying to get through the actual world or map or something like that. Like, for me at least, I'm often consulting this other stuff. And this reminds me a lot of when I miss a goal, or I'm reaching for something, like I'm trying to do 1,000 words, or I'm trying to crack like a section, even now we're talking about today. I'm going to turn to someone like you and be like, you know what? I have a real difficult time doing this. And it's just, what didn't really occur to me until you were saying that is, when we hit those obstacles that's obstructing some kind of goal we're trying to accomplish, usually pivot to someone else and say like, hey, I need a little bit of help, something like that. And I think that seems like often I think I take that for granted, as a writer, like how much I rely on like different folks to help me with various things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I use you a little bit as time to self-motivate, right? Because I send Rich a message basically every time I hit like a higher than normal writing goal. I send him a little message on Discord or something else, and I'm like, oh, I got this many words today. Yeah. And honestly, I do that more for me than I do for you, right? Because it's that nice little self pat on the back, getting to share it, because writing especially can be, and especially when you're doing larger projects and they're not collaborative projects, it can be a little bit isolating. And so even just getting that little bit of, hey, I did it, and of course then, like today I message you because I'm a little bit stuck, right? I need to go back to doing some research. But even just sharing that and being able to acknowledge the difficulty and the obstacle a lot of times is my first step in moving to overcoming and moving through it.
Yeah. What are you working on right now?
Oh, a lot of things. But center stage right now is I'm working on a book. I am writing a book about virtual reality, and specifically there's a problem in virtual reality research right now where, because it has been very focused on the technology, focused on the human-computer interaction and things like that, we are only just now starting to get more human subject focused studies and theories about VR, and we're really also only seeing those studies come out from like psychology and marketing standpoints, none of which are very informative for how we are actually responding to or interacting with, or even how VR is influencing us as human beings. And so this book really tries to get that conversation started, because my whole goal with the process is to start the process of de-emphasizing the technology, because the technology is really important, but we don't want to reduce virtual reality just to the medium that it comes through. We want to be able to dig into it and really have more robust theories for understanding it, because otherwise every time the technology changes, our theories have to change, and that's not great for academic study, right? You don't want your theory to change every 2 to 3 years, especially because it means that whatever got published is probably not current with whatever new VR system has come out or what's going on. So that's my big one right now.
That is the challenge of writing about writing in relation to technologies or rhetoric of technologies, is they're so rapidly changing, and so your goal is to kind of be like a bit more evergreen. It sounds like that you're not dated after like a few years, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely. And especially for things, well, at least the angle that I kind of come at for both video game studies and now my studies with video games, I did a lot of work with video games and embodiment and how it's an embodied process to play, and how even how games tap into things like embodied and distributed cognition and all this wonderful interdisciplinary work that goes into these studies. And so that kind of pivoted very naturally into virtual reality, because the thing that makes these VR experiences so unique is that they are the full embodied effect, right? Like your body is the controller, and you have to actually move in these different spaces where you're kind of in an in-between, because it's not like you ever leave your concrete space, right? Like you're still in your living room or wherever else. It's just got whatever is being projected on your headset or in front of you, things like that. And somehow, when we talk about VR, and I think this is because we end up so focused on how crisp can we get the picture, how realistic can we get the haptics or the senses or anything like that, I think a lot of times we forget that the body is the pivotal point of that. And so kind of being able to actually bring the body back into the center of conversation, because it really is, at least from my point of view, is the center of what these experiences really are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive project, right? It's a book you're working on right now, and we've talked a lot about like our own composing behind it. Yeah, checking in a lot, saying I'm trying to meet these things. I want to say, like, what was like one global goal you had for the project, whether it was like a time you wanted to finish it or things like that? What are some you have, like, I guess, on a more like broad strokes sort of part of it?
So my goals end up or at least writing goals right now, end up being really dictated by the rhythm of the semesters, right? Like I had super large writing goals over the summer when I'm not teaching and I have more time to dedicate to writing. So mind you, I started the research for this project like a year or two ago,
right.
But the actual writing process didn't start probably until July 1st this past summer.
Okay.
Which was when I worked up a proposal to actually send to the publisher and things like that. But I got started on, even before I heard back from my publisher, expressing interest in the project, I started writing right away, right? I didn't wait for them to say yes, because I wanted to be able to have them hopefully say yes, which they did say yes, which was awesome.
Yes.
But once they said yes, then I was able to respond to that email with, oh, okay, cool, I have this many chapters done. Like, do you want to see any samples and things like that? And I kind of wanted to be able, my book is 6 chapters total, and I knew that I could write probably about a chapter a month, since I already had the data collected. If I still had to collect data, it probably would have taken longer, but I already had that. So now my goal is to finish up at least a first draft. I would like to have maybe one quick sweep of revision to check citations and things like that before the holiday this December.
Okay.
And so far I'm actually a little bit ahead of schedule for that. So
yeah.
So here's knock on
right.
wood that,
yes.
that work continues to work out that way.
So, okay. Big goal, finish it by the holidays, send it maybe in the early part of the year, like, feel like you're good. You and I have talked a bit about this, that you tend to just write, you want to hit these kind of word counts and stuff like that. So let's hear about that. And then maybe we can talk maybe a second after that about like how that factors into like revision and so forth. So what is your daily, monthly, weekly word count goals? Do you put those out on paper and things like that? Or how do you track that stuff?
So I have 2 methods of tracking for this. At my home office, I have a nice big whiteboard that hangs up. It's a much fancier one than the one in here. But I track that, and that's got all I break it down by month. So at the start of every month, I write whatever month it is, and then all the things I have to do. So like it's got all our faculty meetings and stuff on it too. Yeah. But under whatever the writing goal is, I then will usually break that down by week. So like if I know a chapter, each book chapter is probably about 8,000 to 10,000 words, and depending on how many weeks are in the month, which is usually 4 to 5, even beyond just the, okay, I want one chapter for the month, then I divide it by either 4 or 5 and break it down into that word count. And this actually all started back in when I was doing my master's program. My practicum advisor, Chuck Cox at American University, made the comment in class one day that 300 words is a page. It's a double-spaced page, but 300 words is a page. And I know, like, I can write a page every day. I know that I can write at least a page every day, which is, you know, that 300 words. And so if I think about it in those tinier chunks, right, then it makes it a lot easier. So even... because if you write a page every day for 5 days, that's 1,500 words at the end of your week.
Yeah.
You've got 5 pages. Congratulations. You only have to do that 4 or 5 more times. You have a whole article or a whole chapter. And that's kind of how I break it down in my head. Because even if I'm writing about nothing or I'm saying the same thing like 6 times, I'll fix that in revision. I've at least got those words down, and it's so much easier, at least for me, to work through an idea and work through refining that idea when there are already words on the page, instead of staring at that very ominous blank document and that little cursor just blinking at you.
Just staring at you. It's the worst when that happens. I mean, to the students watching this, do you use that method? Do you say, I've just got to do 100 words a day, that's it, 250 words? And that's such a good insight from your professor at American, because for me, when I was working on my dissertation, you know, I had just become a dad. Like, I was my son was less than a year old, and I'm like, I got a year to work on this thing, and then I need to get on the market and do this stuff, get most of it done before I go into the job market. So what I was doing was 250 words a day. That's it. I just said, I mean, and I would even track to say I need about, I think dissertations are usually like smaller than a book, but like I think it was like 45 or something. I just set some arbitrary goal, and I was like, if I work on this every day, it actually gets even smaller. It goes, wow, okay, now that I did 500 words in one day, I can rest today and just think. I can read and write and something like that. But like, right, 250 words, like it does add up quickly if you think about it. Just one, sometimes even a paragraph or 2 paragraphs can be 250 words. So yeah, I don't know. It's small steps, I think, than going that. But I think one of your goals recently, was it about 1,000 words? Is that what you typically aim? Did I hear you say that? Or I can remember if we talked about that earlier.
So when I first started, and it's funny because when I wasn't teaching, I had a goal of about 1,000 words a week over the summer.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, it wasn't 1,000 words a week. It was 1,000. It was 1,000, like 2 or 3 times a week. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I was actually able to have the smaller daily goals because I could be really focused on the writing. So it was 1,000 3 times a week. Whereas now that I'm teaching, it's shifted, and the goal is 1,500 words twice a week. But even with that, like, especially as I know that I'm chunking things out, and like I take the train into campus every day, I can usually get about 1,000 done on my train ride in.
How long is your train ride again?
About an hour and 20 minutes.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I usually get like the first 10 minutes. I sit on the train. I get comfy. I set up my little. The morning GO train at least is very sparse, so I can usually kind of spread out and get a nice little writing space to myself in one of the cars. And then I'll write for a good solid hour. And then I usually use like the last 10 minutes kind of to cool down, put all my stuff away, and focus and start thinking about what I'm actually doing on campus that day.
Nice.
And then that gives me, if I get the 1,000 done, because I come in twice a week, so that's at least 2,000 words done on the train, then I've only got another... I can either do it, some days I do it where I write the other 1,000 just on a Monday or Thursday, and other times I break it into, I'll do 500 this day, 500 that day. And I really, really do believe that taking breaks in your writing process is incredibly important to that writing process. And so then this way, and this kind of chunking prevents me from, I have the weekends available to me should a deadline come and get pressed upon me and
Yeah.
I really need to do it. But then I can take those weekends to kind of take a break from it, or I can build in reading time. Like I can read on Fridays, right? Because every time I hit a wall with writing, I turn to reading.
Yeah.
And that usually helps me generate some ideas so that I can get back to writing by the following Monday after I let those ideas marinate in my head over the weekend.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think about like reading as obstacle maneuvering, kind of. In some ways, you're looking for like an answer or something, or you need a little more data or something like that, like in a particular section, and having this break seems really powerful. Now here's something interesting. I just put this in my calculator here. So if you have roughly 60 minutes, let's say you sit down, it's like an hour plus, right? That means you could technically do 16 words a minute on the train.
I'm a pretty fast typer.
That's great.
I type 112 words per minute.
That's
I
great,
actually
yeah.
took a test recently, so I have that little factor
Yeah.
in there. So I know that I am a little bit faster typer and a little bit faster writer, because like I wrote my dissertation the same chunking method, except instead of 250, mine was 750 words a day.
Yeah.
And got it done in about 9 months. So I do know that I am a little bit faster writing, but I think that that's because I don't let things hang me up during that first drafting process. Like you've seen sometimes in our drafts together, if I don't know what a citation is, but I know that the idea is there somewhere, I will go forward and then just in parentheses, I will write parentheses in all caps, citations, and parentheses, because then I come back during revision to fill all that out. Because I also probably do a lot more of, I feel like I do a lot more of my heavy lifting during the revision process to get that clarity. But it's, again, just so much easier to get that clarity when there are already words on the page for me to kind of rearrange and remix and get rid of and add new ones than if I try to... I don't want to get broken out of... It's that momentum thing again, right? I don't want to lose my momentum by having to go open a book, find the page number, things like that. When in reality, I just need the idea for the moment, and then I can keep going forward with it.
We're at a bit of an angle, but I was just typing as we go. You're typing and you're doing something like insert citation later as we go. Like, so up there, that tends to like help me too. And maybe that is like a goal that I think we kind of find common ground on a lot, is just maintaining that momentum. And if we stop and go read and look something back up, it's very hard for me to get going again. Like I've got to chunk those two tasks, like just write and just read, for some days, or do a switch in the morning. Do you write by hand, like a lot when you're drafting or anything, like in terms of trying to meet those goals?
So not professionally. I don't tend to. I'll do my outlines and everything because I use Google Docs religiously.
Yeah.
And so I'll type out my outlines, but I do keep like a personal journal and things like that. And even though my personal journal doesn't necessarily get into my deep theory related things, it is my general like thoughts and ideas just kind of throughout the day. And even if I'm not writing about these things, like I am thinking about them all the time. I play games and I do VR both in my personal and professional life. And like I took this path because they're things that I love and that I'm really passionate about. So yeah, and I think that writing process, and especially because writing by hand is such an embodied process, like I know that there's some stuff going on in my unconscious as I'm jotting those little notes down. But it's not a measurable thing, right? Because it's all, that's that unconscious, embodied writing is thinking type kind of stuff that we can't really tap into just yet.
Yeah. We've even tried to write in VR by hand, and it's a little messy. It's a little messy, yeah. But I just like this thing I have here in front of me. It is all things by hand, like just big sheets of paper you can see here, and that tends to like help me maintain a little bit of momentum when I'm trying to really get something done, like just draft it out, because as you kind of saw right before we started, lots of tinkering happens, and maybe sometimes that's not the best idea. So I do it, and then I rewrite it after that, and I put it out, and then I find like I'm filling in those holes as I go in like interesting ways. But yeah, having a journal too, just to almost be like a place that no one sees, but you're sort of just reflecting on, okay, I made this progress, but now my goal is to do like change this thing up, or I need to maybe change my process or my day when I write. That's not going to find it into the manuscript. It's gonna be somewhere like this, or
Yeah,
a Discord
absolutely.
message or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or my and it feels so silly every time I note this, but especially when I was generating ideas for the book, whenever I would have an idea, I would pull out my phone and I would use like the Samsung Notes because it lets you tag them. And so I have a bunch of notes where if it was for a specific chapter or something, because my book is kind of split into 3 different areas of immersion, interactivity, and imagination. So like I have tags in my notes of book, immersion, interactivity, imagination, where if I'd come up with an idea and I was like, oh, that's a really good idea, I'd jot it down there, I'd tag it, and then just go on about my day. And I don't know that I've actually referenced any of those tags in the process of writing it.
Wow.
But having to write them out like helps me remember them overall, right? So they're there in case I need them, and that idea is not gone. But it feels a little bit silly or a little bit pretentious, right? Because I have a bunch of notes. If anybody ever opened my phone, they would just find like 5, 10, 20 notes just tagged like book project or book idea or something like that.
Yeah. Could you do audio things in that too, or is it just okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. I mean, again, like that's something you might have while you're walking the dog or something, a dog or multiple dogs, or something like that. And if I'm on my bike or something like that, I can just turn it on real quick, or something like that. Just kind of keeping that thinking going seems to be really helpful for achieving certain goals and stuff
absolutely.
like that. So you and I collaborate quite a bit. Well, that lately last year or two, something like that. We've been doing these projects. I'm trying to. I was thinking about this morning about things that we tend to do to help each other sort of meet different deadlines, and I think it's just one is just constant communication about various processes, and I can show some folks. One thing that we did to kind of meet these goals, we looked at like for this project we've been working on, is various deadlines that were coming up in journals we wanted to apply to. And so I think we had about a year we were projecting out, if I remember that correctly, or at least to June. This is one of the cases. And it was just nice to see overall what we were trying to get towards, and then drilling down to those various goals as we went. If I go back to our...
And some of them changed.
Yeah. Right? Like what comes to mind in terms of what changed? I'm trying to... I was thinking about that this morning, like ways we had pivoted.
Well, I mean, the initial study, the whole thing had to change
when
we got attacked by bots.
Yeah, so... Okay, so there's an interesting thing that happened. We can't obviously like show the raw data, but I'm trying to find right up here the article that we recently finished, or that we set. We had this. I think we took most of these out at this point, didn't we? But for a while in our history, you can see that there was like dates that we had set for each other, and had been working from that. And so I'm just losing a bit of track of that. But when we were originally working with this nonprofit, the IGDA Foundation, we did a study with them, and we're releasing some more results as we speak. And one of the things that came up is our goal was to get a survey out in spring 2021, if I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And so we put it out there, right? And what happened?
It got attacked by bots.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of fake results, basically, because whatever, and we think that this was because people were entering their emails for a raffle to get a gift card or something similar.
Yeah.
And so we think that because it got attached to that potential for a monetary gain.
There we go.
That's a bunch of bots, and it was really kind of disappointing too, because at first we were like, oh, 300, 400, 500 people have responded to our survey.
Yeah.
This is great. We have great numbers. And then when we actually started combing through the data, I think it was actually our graduate assistant, Indita, who was the first to notice that a whole bunch of them either had big blank sections or were the exact same
Yeah.
responses and things like that. And so we basically had to scrap that entire survey, reassess our distribution technique, because I think that was when we changed it to actually having it just go through to the IGDA emails directly. Because I think first Renee tweeted it, and then we had it just go to their emails, and everybody had, and people had to go through basically the whole process again. So despite our goal being sending that survey out in spring of 2021, I think we finally actually sent our real one out that like June or July, right?
Right.
Because we didn't get the results then until August, September.
Yeah.
And it worked. You shift. That's that pivoting,
right?
Right.
And you have these collaborators. Sometimes they're more visible just because you've asked them to be your co-author and things like that. But other times you're turning to people who just are kind of off the page, right? But this is a good case of, and we can see here up on the screen, like, these are the 3 questions we asked, like open-ended, when we revised it. It was like, how would you sum up your overall experience with the pandemic? Then we asked 2 other questions. And the only way we got at that really simple 3 questions only kind of stuff was because of this failed goal, basically.
Yeah.
Get the thing out in spring. Goal was to collect, hundreds of responses, hopefully. We got hundreds of responses. We realized they were bots. So in a way, like, as much as it, is disheartening to say, the goal was failed. So we had to go, all right, let's regroup. We talked to, the IGDA. We came up with these questions. We were like, let's be efficient. And as you mentioned, we had a more targeted outreach to them, right? And it worked pretty well, I think. I mean, we still got hundreds of responses, and
we still got about 300. I think.
That were indicative of the membership and so forth, and things like that. And that stuff doesn't appear in this manuscript. Like, we don't say that there was that failed approach, but we have talked about it, like in sort of debriefings and things like that, because it is an important thing to bring up. It's just sometimes those things, they don't come up a lot, in the final manuscript.
Well, even our initial, because this is a grant project, and we're still working on it, and even our initial submission for the grant didn't go through. They rejected it. Yeah. But they rejected it with notes on how to revise it. And I think especially with that idea of momentum, right? One of the other things that I've had to really internalize as far as setting and keeping writing goals is not to be afraid of that critique. Because even when a person is telling you could do something better, or even when they're mean, right? Even when they kind of just make you feel like you suck at writing, they're at least giving you something to respond to, some kind of, how, because writing is not a solitary practice, right? It is, you are always connected to your readers or your audience, and you can try to assume how they're going to respond, but you don't actually know how people are going to respond until they actually read your stuff. And so even if you get like negative reviews or a rejection or something similar to that, you can use that information to either retune what you're doing, like we did for the grant, where we figured, like, they gave it to us the second time. And we've been able to produce a lot of great work, and we've done a lot of great work here with Renee at IGDA, and you presented it at GDC, which was awesome. And we've got a couple of things coming out from that grant work, so it was definitely worth it. And I know a lot of people who get so demoralized when they get that initial rejection that they reject, like, they turn away from their whole idea.
Right.
And that's not productive. Or at least I don't think that that's very productive, because there's always, like, it's writing. It's not a yes-no kind of thing. It's more open-ended. And so you can get that feedback to let you know either how to retune it to go at that same wall, or at another project with Steve Holmes that got given, we submitted it to one journal at one point, and they told us to revise and submit, and we revised and resubmitted, and they still weren't super happy with it. They gave us the invitation to revise and submit again, but they really wanted us to include stuff that was just outside the scope of the original project. And so at that point we decided we were just going to pivot to a different journal. And the new journal loved it. And so you can either, you're going to hit walls no matter what. You can either go at them again, or you can turn and head towards another wall. This is My students probably get annoyed because I say this in class a lot when I tell them that the only difference between like them as writers and me as a writer is I've just had more experience to hit more walls.
Yeah.
And because you're not going to escape it. Like it's for better or for worse.
Yeah.
It's just not a smooth process. There's going to be something that comes up along the way, and it's really more of a matter of how you move forward from that. Than trying to just avoid the walls at all.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's one thing I want to mention here is you can see up here on the screen, everybody. This is NaNoWriMo is coming out, and this is where like writers will say, I'm going to do a novella or a full novel in a month. So it's November, all of November, National Novel Writing Month. So I'll put this in the show notes because I think those were also deleted. So we will put those in there. But I just want to put this to you, Beth, like, okay, let's say that you have a goal to finish like a big project. Let's say it's like, a couple thousand words or maybe even like 20,000 with a novella. You start meeting these goals, you get several thousand for, let's say, 7 days straight. You're just rocking it. You're doing all that. And then you start to see this kind of stuff. And this is what happens to me. I get a lot of momentum, and then I start going, like depleting kind of gains. What do you do in those, if you've had that situation, or what advice would you give to a writer who sort of has these highs and lows and things like that?
So honestly, when I start really seeing a dip in my own productivity, I take a break.
Yeah.
And this, I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Like if you're struggling to write, shouldn't you be trying to do stuff to get yourself to write more? But I have found through my own experience and through the experience of a lot of my colleagues that a lot of the work and a lot of the intellectual heavy lifting that we're doing as writers sometimes happens way more in the background than we give it credit for. And so sometimes I think of it kind of in the same way that like you think of a computer, right? If there might be something, you might be coming up against a block in your writing because something in the back of your head is actually still loading and trying to do that processing. And if you try to expand too much bandwidth by continuing to like force yourself to type and write and get everything out, you're actually decreasing that processing speed. Where if you take a break, you take a breather, you step away from it for a while, your brain has more bandwidth to work through that. And then chances are, or at least usually in my experience, if I can take that couple days away from it, I come back to it and I'm ready to go, or I have a new idea or something else. And I might do other related type things, like I might read during that break, because like I said, the reading also that's my other like secret secret weapon if I really get stuck. Even if it's not necessarily a scholarly book, like even if I pick up and read or I'll play a game, something where I'm interacting with some kind of new information. And that novelty will sometimes just be like the little spark that I need or whatever else, so that when I'm back and sitting back down to try to write again, it's working. The only thing with that is that it means that you also have to give yourself enough time to allow for those breaks. So not procrastinating if you've got deadlines and things like that is kind of an essential part for that approach to work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing like how with this tracker, like it does map out the 30 days, for example, or like 29 days we see here just as a sample. And it's interesting that, with this template, like I almost might add like a notes category about, if you're seeing like 0, 0, 0 a couple days, there's probably a reason why. Either you're taking a break to read, or you're doing something else. Or just simply doing nothing related to work. For example, we have fall break next week. Like, I'm going to be doing some work, catching up on a little bit of marking. Some of us are going out of town. We're doing things like that.
I'm going to Disney World.
I'm excited. Yeah, that's amazing. And you're not taking like your work with you. You're not taking your laptop. You're just...
Yeah, so I might take my laptop just because I have a little bit of grading to do.
Yeah.
But even if I do that, like I'm not opening it until I'm on my way back home on the plane. Like really, I'm taking it with me so I don't have to sit there twiddling my thumbs on the plane ride home.
Right.
But no, I'm not doing other work. Like not opening probably not even opening my inbox.
Right. And you've already established, set that for yourself, so you're not sort of backtracking on your goals or sort of missing any deadlines, because you've sort of have been ahead of schedule. I think you were telling me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this actually happened. This actually happened because I was going on this break, because I got so excited for the break. That energy, I've had that little bit of extra energy basically since Monday. And so what is it, October 6th? So my goal for October is about 8 to 10,000 words, and since Monday I've got about 5,500. So I am halfway through, which means that I'll probably even have a little bit of extra rest time at the end, and that happened because of how excited I am. I've been channeling my excitement to not be doing work into this little bit of time where I still am doing work, so I can be like, haha, now I really don't have to think about it when I am experiencing Walt Disney World.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. And again, just shows like if you have goals, whether they're quantified or they're more just, I just want to finish this part, and it might be different, for a lot of folks. You end up having a little bit more space to think or just relax if you can, so and even I think sometimes you and I will do this too. We'll say we have a goal for a date to submit something, and I think even last week or the week before, I can't quite remember, you and I were working on something together and saying, let's just do this, try to write it out together at this time and this date, we'll meet. And then I think one of the goals for you was to submit this by the end of the week. I think it was on the 30th of September. Yep. We were going for. And so we finished it on Wednesday, and we're like, okay, we can send it right now, or we can just take a little break, take a day break or a day or two just to think about it and then come back with fresh eyes. So I'll be curious to see like how, as you sort of step away for a bit from your book project, how it kind of maybe unlocks some new thinking or gives you some fresh perspective on it.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I mean, it usually does.
Yeah.
Usually, even if I'm not thinking about it at all, some part of me somewhere is still like quietly, unconsciously thinking about it.
Yeah.
Either that, or it just gives me enough energy to be able to think about it when I come back to it. Because you can burn yourself out. Like, as much as we all want to be super productive all the time, if you focus on one thing for too much, you can burn yourself out, and then you're doing yourself a disservice, really, because you're working against yourself, and you're working kind of against. Everybody's got their own like natural circadian rhythm and work rhythm and things like that. And so my rhythm could be totally different from like we seem to have pretty similar, but like my rhythm and my other colleague, who you mentioned earlier, Veronica Joyner, Ronnie, she has a very different writing style than I do, and they're both what work for us. And so that's just kind of what you do.
And you two write together quite a bit. Just there's a word you have for it. You call it sometimes like.
Oh, we body double.
Body double. Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so we actually do this a little bit more. We tend to do it more often for teaching work than we do writing, just because we both are more solitary writers. But we will pull each other up, and we've done this. Ronnie and I went to the same master's and PhD program together, so we have done this since that initial meeting in master's when we were doing it for classes, where we used to do it in person, but now she lives all the way in Florida. So we pull each other up on Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever, and we just kind of are in that space together. And sometimes we'll sit and we'll be chatting with each other or whatever it is, and we don't really get much work done. But those are the days where usually we can both kind of tell that like we needed a break, we needed that downtime, and so that's still very productive downtime. Or we'll both just sit there and we'll have each other on screen, and neither of us will really be chatting, but we'll doing our work and everything else. And it kind of just helps you stay focused and stay a little bit motivated. And it also, we do this the same time, same day every week. We do it Thursdays at 2 p.m. And so it kind of builds the habit in my brain, right? Like I know Thursdays at 2 p.m. I'm working. Like I'm doing this kind of work and this kind of project. And so I will actually feel my brain shifting into, like over the summer we didn't do it as much, but because it was so practiced, Thursdays at 2 p.m. my brain was still shifting into like, oh, work mode, and I had to remind it to like, we're not teaching right now, we don't have to do that. And I had to shift out of it because the habit gets developed pretty quickly because it's so
Yeah.
because it's so embodied. It's all embodied.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that's one thing I would recommend to students, and I probably should do it more in my classes. Is even if you're not talking and saying a single word, have a routine time you can get together. Either if it's on Zoom, as you were saying with Ronnie, because you're both different parts of the world, or you and I would do this sort of sometimes in the summer. Just sit together and write, and the idea of seeing each other doing something can just be like a passive kind of form of accountability, right? I mean, and I used to do this thing with it's the Institute for Digital Literacies here on campus. They have a Friday writing group for faculty, and every 50 minutes they would shut off the mics and shut off the cameras, and you just write, and then you come back at the top of the hour and just check in for a minute and say, how did things go? So this is what I want to accomplish today. I just want to get some things down on the page, or I'm really trying to hit like 500 words by the end of the morning or something like that. And that's just, it was really invigorating a lot of times. It never felt like a competition or anything like that. It was more just, I want to be around somebody, even if it's in virtual space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what the whole, because body doubling is like a productivity theory.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is you are more likely to be working and focused if the people around you are working and focused. And so it ends up becoming kind of like you feed into each other. The downside to that is when one person gets distracted, it usually does mean that like the whole group gets distracted.
Yeah.
But if everybody stays on task and they're all working, like it's hard to be the one who's just like, nah, I'm gonna sit on Facebook. If you know that everybody around you is sitting and diligently doing what they're aiming to be doing or working towards their goals, it helps with that motivation.
Yeah, and it happens every once in a while. Like you're chatting and you just, even in the writing group I was in, someone would start talking and it'd go 10 minutes and you're like, okay, let's get back to it. Like somebody eventually has to go, all right, back to work. In some ways, I find timers really help with that. Like 50 minutes, you stop and then you just start it over again. You kind of know where your headspace is supposed to be at that time. And even if you're just reading for that 50 minutes, it's yours and yours alone, and if everybody sticks to that, it's usually like those are established before the things start. So there's not much like conflict, but occasionally we just need reminders like, this is why we're here to do this sort of thing. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So, we're just out of time, and I know you're teaching in a bit, so I want to ask you, and just so people know, what classes are you teaching right now and for the rest of the year?
So right now, I am teaching video game rhetorics, which is an incredibly popular class that apparently my students have been bragging about to students even outside of York, because I've gotten a couple emails from students outside of York asking if I could come teach this class at theirs, but it is a really fun class. It is the class that actually my dissertation research is the research that I used to design the course, because it's a gamefully designed course, which means I run the class like it's a video game, like it's an RPG. And then the other course that I'm teaching, which is also a very fun class, is Mechanics of Style, which is in process of being renamed to Principles of Style and Design, because it is a design-focused course. Students learn visual rhetoric, visual analysis, and then the back half of the course, they actually put together their own book projects. So you end up with like a little 20 to 25-page book project that you can leave the course with. And that one's really fun too. Next winter, I think I teach 2 sections of the writing and digital cultures. But outside of that, here I was hired at York to take over the Seneca courses, and a lot of my official title is I'm assistant professor of visual studies. So cool. So most of my courses are design based, things like the words are losing the words.
Yeah.
Document design, visual analysis and document design. That's what it is. Visual rhetoric and document design, multimedia authoring practices, and again, these style and design classes, and then the game studies class.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, you're teaching video game rhetorics today, right? Actually,
no, yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay.
So mixing those days up.
Right. Yeah. And it's we've got like a lab just for those sort of classes. So yeah, I go and I'm like, which one am I in today? I don't know. because I'm doing 4001 and 1004, so it's very easy to just flip those two from my yeah. But yeah, I mean, what? So with those two classes, like, what are students working on right now in those?
So video game rhetorics, they are all currently they're playing Undertale over reading week because the game we play like 4 different games through the semester, and so we just finished up Oxenfree and now they're playing Undertale, but they're also working on their critiques. And because critiques in video games and game studies usually take the form of videos. They are all video critiques. So we've got a workshop coming up when we get back from reading week, and then the week after that, I'm like bringing a huge bag of popcorn and everything else because we're gonna watch everybody's critiques, have a nice big party, give some feedback as they go. And then they get to turn to the end of the class, the last bit of class. They all will form little game development teams and basically end up with a 2 to 5 minute demo of a video game by the end of the term. So that's them. And then otherwise, mechanics of style, they have a visual analysis due on Friday, which is a little bit different than like a traditional essay because I am expecting them to have both their written analysis, but then they have to take that analysis and stylize it on Satori.
Okay.
And so they get graded both in part for their content, but then also how their design choices intermesh and integrate with that content to elevate said content. And then when they come back from reading week, they're all actually going to meet me individually to pitch their book projects because we work out their rubric for their book projects kind of on a more individual basis.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, that seems to fit a lot of goal setting too.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you.
Of course.
So with these kind of projects, right, there's a lot of time for thinking and so forth. How do you explain, or how do you frame either to them or to yourself, like, the role of drafting in meeting goals? I just had this conversation yesterday with some students, and I'm saying, why are some of us hesitant for submitting drafts and doing things like that? And I don't know. It's a very hard, like, kind of tough question to answer because sometimes, like, when we're working on things, we are drafting and submitting manuscripts and then getting them for review multiple times sometimes before we publish something. But I'm trying to think about, like, how to frame that in terms of goal setting. It's a little tricky, but, like, you know, in your experience, how does drafting sort of figure into meeting goals, and in what way does that apply to students, you think?
So I kind of force my students to draft. In both classes, for example, like, they have to bring, so the way that video game rhetorics is constructed, is you get the points as long as you meet certain criteria. And so one of the criteria for this first major assignment is they have to participate in the critique workshop, and then the criteria for what counts as like an adequate draft is also clearly established. So they have to do that drafting process, and then when they turn to their game as well, like, part of one of the main objectives of them making their game is they have to go through they have to draft a game design document, and then we review the game design document, and then they actually have a second review where we'll have a demo showcase where everybody's going to play each other's games, and then like a week or 2 after that is when they're actually going to send in the final piece to me. So, and same kind of thing, mechanics of style. Students meet with me for their initial pitch. We go back and forth. We work out the criteria, and then I run the rest of that as though I pretend I'm a publisher because I've gone through the publication process a bunch of times at this point. So if they make changes after that initial pitch, which they're welcome to do because projects change all the time, they take new avenues.
As we saw, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They just have to contact me again, whether it's come to my office or shoot me an email or whatever, to keep me, informed of that, so I can update. I have like an Excel sheet that I fill out with everybody's individual projects. They have a workshop where they have to bring in a sample proof and rationale, and so that they can show each other just a couple pages, get some initial feedback, and then we have kind of like a book showing, book viewing, and the similar to that demo showcase, right, where everybody gets to show off their awesome projects that they've been working on for so long. and then actually get that little bit of feedback. So like usually for that, everybody will pull their stuff up on a computer, and I put a bunch of sticky notes or index cards by each computer. And so as everybody moves around, they write a little note and go. Because again, revision, resubmitting, not throwing an idea away, even if somebody is critical of it, is just it's a quintessential part of the writing process, because you're never writing in a vacuum. You're always writing, whether it's a more explicit collaboration like what we do, or if it's the collaboration with your publishers, with your audience, whoever it is, you're always working with other people.
Yeah.
And unless you're writing a diary, you're not really ever writing just for yourself. So you have to be responsive to those other people and to that target audience. Otherwise, nobody's going to read your work.
Yeah, it's, a goal is to be accountable, right, for yourself and for others. The goal, sort of setting drafts that way works, but it's also to get problem solve, right? Is I'm trying to work through this complex idea. Maybe I'm working in a mode I've never worked in, or a media I've never worked in. And so coming together with a draft is helpful for just problem solving. It's like, I kind of still don't know what I'm doing here. This looks a little garbagey, but like, help me figure it out, And, your peers next to you are going to help you with that. But yeah, your professor will as well. And I think that's.
Well, and even it's really funny because a lot of times students tell me that one of the best things for them generating their own ideas is also getting to see what their peers are doing,
Yeah.
and how they're working on it. And so not only are you getting in these workshops or in these collaborations or everything else, not only are you getting direct feedback on whatever it is that you're doing, you're also getting the chance and the opportunity to see what other people are doing and how their ideas are coming together. And somebody might have an idea that you look at and you're like, oh, this is really cool. I can take and like remix and do this. Like I can do it this way for my own project, or I can set it up this way. And same way, whenever I get stuck writing, I go back to reading. When you get stuck and you hit an obstacle, sometimes looking at what other people are doing can help you figure out a way to kind of overcome your own obstacle and keep headed towards your own goals too.
Yeah, even back to that body doubling, just seeing or experiencing in proximity to someone else can be really enlightening. Oh, okay, yeah, wow, like I'm gonna work. I was kind of not feeling it today, but I showed up, I brought something, and now I'm ready to go because I can see, or in some, whatever sense you want to apply to it, like to that person, and it tends to have some pretty powerful effects. Okay, one last question for you. What'd you have for breakfast today?
A Boost protein shake.
Nice. Okay. What do your dogs eat for breakfast?
They get Purina Pro Plus. We rotate the protein, so they get like lamb, chicken, or beef, depending on what the flavor of the month is. And then they also always get a cookie every time that I leave. So they all got a little cookie treat, like a little biscuit or dog treat kind of thing.
Nice.
For watching the house when I leave, because they're at home with my partner, so he's taking care of them, but they love me.
Yeah.
So they get super upset, and I always feel guilty, and I have to give them all a cookie before I leave.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. Well, Beth, it's been a pleasure reconnecting with you here on the stream, and thanks for your patience while we were problem solving the goal to get this stream started again. So we're just take a really quick break, and then I have a couple comments to wrap up. So yeah, if you have any other questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you can ask them in the comments later on, and we'll be sure to attend to them. All right, give me 1 second. Let's just see how this looks. Oh, look how fancy that is. Okay. All right, folks. So, a little bit of pivoting, a little bit of things we had to do here for today's live stream. So, we've got a lot of stuff planned for the next few weeks. Let me show you what's coming up, and we'll get some of those things kind of worked out in the next few days just to see, yeah, what we can do. Because, again, trying to like simulcast is kind of nice. You can go on Twitch, you can go on different channels and do this work. All right, so today we talked about your fall writing goals, and ours really. So thinking about how to goal set, how to work through different obstacles can be a really important thing as you start to work on more projects and as you start to really try to accomplish those goals. So next week or after sort of fall week, reading week that's coming up, we've got writing for publication. And so we'll have a special guest on to talk about some ways to think about writing for publication, whether you're thinking about creative spaces or you're thinking about writing for academic journals, for books, things like that. So what do you want to do with the work that you're doing in your classes? Or to put it differently, how do you want to translate the work you're perhaps doing in different classes into publications, how to think about those. Then we're going to talk about writing under pressure, so deadlines and so forth, or if you're working on sort of timed situations, how do you work through those? That is a challenge even I faced recently, which I'll tell you about during that time. How did I work under immense pressure and what happened? I'll just give you a spoiler alert. It resulted in a little bit of failure, but I was able to learn a lot from that process. Then we've got writing as podcasting. So thinking about writing for sound, right? And writing transcripts for accessibility. What does podcasting look like? What are some ways or strategies for thinking about it in that way? And then writing in the senses. So this is a two-part series. We're going to think about writing in the senses for food. So kind of working with tastes and smell and so forth, activating those senses and applying them, and then writing in the senses on drinks. So in recent terms and so forth, I have been thinking about a course on beer and writing. I recently taught that when I was back at University of Cincinnati as a PhD student before I became here and started here as a professor. So we'll talk about that. Writing with web platforms. We've got some special guests in line for that as well. If you want to think about writing for a drag and drop platform or doing a little bit of coding and so forth, what are some options that you have? And then finally, an open writing workshop and hangout. So if you have a project you're wanting to work through and you want to send it to me on the stream or privately, things like that, we can workshop it live. And so it's just kind of a celebration at the end of the term. And a good luck as you work on your finals and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we have planned, and we'll have more to say about the winter term moving forward. So that's going to do it all from me this week. And, again, thanks for your patience while we worked through a couple technical difficulties. For the most part, we'll be starting at 11:30 and going until 1 p.m. Eastern Time every Wednesday now through November 30th. And I'll always be your host and looking forward to chatting with you about that. If you have ideas about what we should do on upcoming streams, or you have anyone you would recommend to join the stream, please let me know. We're always happy to have guests in addition to the ones that I'm kind of currently scheduling. So again, take care and thanks so much.